Greetings, Wargamers. We're your hosts, Trevor,
Jay,
Josh, and this is Chain Attack.
Chain Attack is sponsored by Discount Games Incorporated. Discount Games Incorporated specializes in customer service, low prices, and prompt shipping. You can find our web store at www.discountgamesinc.com.
Welcome to Chain Attack. I'm your host, Trevor, and I played a bunch of God Simulator World Box last night.
What in the world?
It's a sandbox thing. It's a, you know, do you remember?
I know exactly what you're about to compare it to, so don't do that, or you'll ruin my impression.
Well, I'm not going to compare it to that because it's really not like any of those. There's no game.
Oh,
as far as, like there's nothing you're trying to accomplish. It is literally a sandbox environment where you get to play God. You just do whatever you want.
Okay.
Drop a tornado, drop a wizard, drop a bunch of piranha, whatever you want to do, you do it.
Drop a wizard. Amazing.
I dropped a wizard and then I dropped a necromancer and then I watched them fight.
As one does.
My favorite activity was I had this little pool. I filled it with piranha, and I would drop things in the pool to see which things could make it out of the pool before the piranha killed it.
So ridiculous.
The wizard did not make it out of the pool.
Okay.
I'm Jay, and this was supposed to be my first full day at Disneyland today, but we live in Hell World, and so it's not.
I'm Josh, and my video gaming has been slightly curtailed recently, but last night I went back to Slipways, and I thought I was doing so good, and I was encouraged because I've seen the kind of scores that Trevor can achieve, thanks to the magic of, you know, your Steam friends list or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I get to the end of the mission. I'm doing like the first campaign mission. Have you done the campaign missions, Trevor?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So, like the first campaign mission, you're supposed to mine a certain amount of this different resource that's not in just the normal games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm killing. I'm getting achievements that I've never gotten before. I'm feeling so good about all the solar-powered planets I've produced. Then I get to the end. Do you want to guess how many stars I got, Trevor?
I have no idea. 3?
One. I got
One.
one. I got one because it doesn't matter what I do in this game. It hates me and it actively wants me to know that I'm garbage.
Sorry. So horrible.
It's just literally made to break my sweet little innocent soul. So funny. So, you know, madman that I am, I will probably go back for more punishment. Actually, it probably explains why I can stand politics.
Well, I being the eternal optimist that I am.
Yes, yes.
So this week we canceled our trip to Disneyland, and then I booked a flight to go to Chicago the end of March, and I'm not going to actually attend Adepticon. I'm just going to go and play with a small group of friends in Chicago. But
it's at the same time that Adepticon's happening?
Yes.
Okay.
So that would that's something that'll get me out of my house. Going to Chicago.
Going to Chicago.
Going to Chicago and playing games with people. That's Chicago's I keep telling my wife that she asked me what I want for Christmas last couple months ago, and I asked her for Portillo's will send you like a packet of Italian beefs, basically, with like I think the bread you cook yourself and like all the ingredients. They send you here, make your own Italian beefs straight from Portillo's pack. And she asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and that's what I told her. She did not get me that because I buy my own Christmas presents, and I didn't buy that. But that is one of the things I miss the most about Chicago.
We did. I think I've said this before, but for New Year's we got the frozen Lou Malnati's deep dish pizzas, and they're actually pretty good for.
They ship them overnight or something, right?
Yeah, well, they ship them in styrofoam, etc. Yeah, yeah. So those are worth checking out if you want a deep dish pizza. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I actually end up going to Chicago at the end of March or not.
I like your optimism.
Yeah, me too. So when is sorry, that's not what I was going to say. I patronize or shop at discountgamesinc.com because you're a good person who does good things, and this will lead to having joy in your life. So there you go. So this episode we're going to be pitching different things we've been doing or watching or etc. to each other. And so who would like to go first?
I'm long-winded. I'm afraid if I go first, I'll take the whole episode.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
I really should go last.
Okay. Well, my pitch will be quick then, so I will go. I need you to vote Josh Wheeler for House District 3. Oh, sorry. Staying on message there. Actually, so I have a few hours of play of I'm pretty sure that it's just because of Steam's algorithm that like knows about roguelites or whatever. I don't know why I picked this up, but I wanted to make you guys aware of it because I actually think it's a pretty interesting product, right? So the name, well, first of all, let me see if I can learn my audience, right? I'm trying to be better about knowing who I'm pitching to, right? What are your guys' feelings on role-playing games?
You don't know your audience that well?
Just being extra cautious here, Trevor.
Okay. I have a room dedicated to them.
Are you talking about
I'm
pen
talking
and
about
paper
computer
or computer?
Games. Yeah, good point.
Okay,
good,
so they
good
are
clarification.
they are wonderful to purchase and look at longingly in my Steam library.
I'm in agreement with Jay.
Okay, well, so my pitch for this game is how would you enjoy an RPG that has some incredible like tarot card style art all over it?
Maybe.
Because that's what made me buy this thing. So this game is called Voice of Cards: The Isle Dragon Roars. It has this narrator who's pretty, dry wit, like he's just making snarky comments all the time. And the whole world keeps getting built by cards like shuffled out. So it'll be like, you go to the overland map, right? And it like shuffles and deals out, here's water cards, here's a path, here's forest cards, right? And you're moving a little pawn around, and then when you go into battle, it's these huge tarot cards. I don't know, the art is just like really well done, but the storytelling is fun. Like it's fun, like I'm not that far into it, but it's cracking me up because one of the first things that happens is like the tutorial, in Metroid style, you're like really powerful and then you lose all your powers, that kind of, what do you call that? Shtick, I guess, right? In this one, in the very first battle, you're battling as like this super powerful trio, right? Who's like famous across the land for defeating dragons and monsters and stuff. And so you play as them to learn the controls of the game, and then you actually meet your character who's a total schlub. And then like your character like runs afoul of that party of characters early on, and they put the massive beat down on him. And so anyway, I'm basically playing it out of a spirit of vengeance now because I don't actually care about the quest. I assume eventually the story will convince me to care about the quest again, but I really just want to stick it to those jerks. So yeah, I picked it up. It's a card battler, so when you actually go into combat with stuff, it's like I said, that's I think why the algorithm fed it to me, right? Because it has a little bit of those elements like a not exactly like a Slay the Spire, because it's honestly pretty basic compared to.
I don't understand why you would pitch this to me.
Because I know how much you hate card games.
It's funny because when I go to the page for it, it says similar to games you've played, and it has Monster Train and Banners of Ruin as the two top. Which I
Yeah,
have.
that's what
I
I
have
say.
a total of 50 hours between those two games.
Right. See, so I'm pretty sure that the algorithm was just like, oh yeah, clearly this is what he wants to play.
So it's developed by Square Enix. That's a pretty big name.
Right. Yeah, it's got like a pretty powerful pedigree, right? And like, I've enjoyed it the few hours that I've played it. Let's just put it that way. So that's my pitch. If you want to bring a little bit of joy to your life with, I think only about $20, Voice of Cards, The Isle of Dragons is probably not a bad way to do it.
I think that I've thought some about computer role playing games, and I think that like what I'm searching for is out there, but it's just kind of so I feel like there's certain ones.
Don't you think the challenge, Jay, is just that some of them are so long? They feel so.
And that's
right?
part of it, but also there's certain styles that I've decided that I basically just kind of want to. I'm more interested in the story behind the role playing games than either. On one end, you have like Mass Effect, that is kind of a first person shooter role playing game, and on the other end, you have like I'm going to play Baldur's Gate 3 because I have to, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it. But like a lot of the ones that I've spent the most time playing are kind of the isometric 2D. You're moving your party across the map, and really it's kind of a tactical combat game that has different story points going along throughout it, and which the combats usually end up taking more time than anything else. And I think I don't know what games necessarily fall in this, but I just kind of want more games that focus more heavily on story than those other things. So I don't know what to say about that. All right. Well, the thing that I have to pitch to the two of you is the Wheel of Time TV series on Amazon.
Oh man, I should be a shoo-in for this pitch.
Have you read any of the books?
I read up until I want to say it was book 7.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how far I got either. I'll say I got, probably roughly maybe a little bit farther than Josh, and it started getting to the point where in the middle books it felt like there was a long time between the new ones coming out.
Also between like plot points actually being resolved.
Yeah, so that's part A. Part B was that it felt like the author had lost his way, and that he would, add new things in, or you didn't get back to characters that you cared about, et cetera, et cetera. And then C was that it just became obvious that he was going to die before this series got finished. And, it's great that it did get finished by another author, but that wasn't obvious that was going to happen when I quit reading the series.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that wasn't why I quit either. I mean, you basically have said all the reasons that I quit, Jay.
Yeah, and so this feels like one of the first big post Game of Thrones. There were a bunch of TV stations and streaming services, etc., that felt like Game of Thrones was really a big cultural phenomenon, and they wanted to have the next Game of Thrones. And there's a lot of reasons why I feel like this is a good choice, because there were a lot of things that were really cool or interesting about the Wheel of Time series. It did have some really good world building going on with it.
Remind me, I should tell a little story that I don't know why I didn't think to answer this when Trevor asked if I'd read the books.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, my second daughter, her name is inspired by one of the characters in the book. So.
Oh, which one?
Leandrin Sidai.
Oh, okay.
And isn't she in the series too, the show?
I think so.
Clearly she left an impression.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't mean to interrupt. Carry on. So.
No, yeah, that's fine.
It seemed like a good choice.
The other thing that's a positive for why it is potentially a good choice as an adaptation is because it is it's one of the series where you have the possibility, because of the flaws that the books have, where the TV series could be better than the source material.
Oh,
And
yeah,
so,
like you could kind of clean up some of the challenges, you're saying.
I mean, like the middle books, they could be, made into something that's, you could cut out a lot of things in the books and make a better product, I would say.
Yeah, you
So,
could take the plot lines that people care about and string them together and remove things they don't care about, or send them off onto their own mini series or whatever.
right. Yeah. So, it's kind of interesting to see, this is one of the first big attempts post Game of Thrones to have the next Game of Thrones. And I guess as far as I don't know if this is so much as a pitch as I'll give you my thoughts on it, and you can say if it interests you or whatever. I think that so. First of all, I'll say a few things that are a little bit compare and contrast with the books versus the TV series. Kind of a basic plot of it is that there is basically the Wheel of Time is people being reincarnated, and reincarnation is real in this universe. And so the main character is the Dragon Reborn, and the Dragon Reborn is the chosen one who is going to face the Dark One. And the last time that the dragon was reborn, he failed and tainted the source of magic for all men. And so now any men who use magic go crazy.
Like not instantly, right? It's like
correct. It's as they use
right?
magic, they become crazy.
Yeah, I always liked that about this book, the world building.
Yeah. So, but one thing that is different between the books and the TV show is that in the books, it's abundantly clear, kind of right from the start, who the main character is and who the Dragon Reborn is.
Okay.
And
the series isn't making that clear.
Well, in the books, it is, there is the main character who is the Dragon Reborn. He has two male friends that are also important characters, and then there's also two female characters that are also kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
But in the TV series, all five characters are kind of given the same importance, and they don't know who is the Dragon
Reborn. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So you don't find out until basically towards the end of season 1 who is actually the Dragon Reborn, which I think is kind of interesting, and it's a fairly big change between the two. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting is that it's obvious that they spent a lot of money on this show, and there are a lot of things that are well done with it, but it also kind of made me appreciate it feels like anyone who's trying to create an epic fantasy kind of at this point has to measure themselves against against two properties that in my opinion kind of knocked it out of the park. And so the first one is going to be the Lord of the Rings movies.
Sure.
It feels like the set design and granted they are a little bit they have a little bit of an advantage because there was a lot of Lord of the Rings art that they could kind of use as a foundation. But the other one is Game of Thrones, and like when you watch an episode of Game of Thrones, like the architecture, the clothing that people wear, etc., it feels like it fits the setting, it's impressive, and it doesn't necessarily feel like it's similar to stuff that you've seen before.
Sure.
And I felt like Wheel of Time fell a little bit short of either of those. I would say I would place it kind of in between it's not as bad as like a sci-fi original show.
Okay. You're saying the right words to me. I understand.
It is in between those two. I would say there's certainly parts where you're like, wow, this is really cool, really well done, etc. But there's some parts where you're like, oh, I feel like I'm looking at some architecture from the Middle East or something like that.
Jay, I need you to remind me, have you watched The Expanse yet?
I've watched the first 1 or 2 episodes.
So how did you connect with Wheel of Time versus how have you connected with The Expanse so far? And then the follow-up question is, tell me how their production values compare.
So I would say that the production value is a little bit higher than in The Expanse.
Oh, okay.
I think that The Expanse actually, from the few episodes I've seen, it actually does have a pretty solid production value. But it's also, sci-fi that is set in our solar system. And
Yeah,
so,
right. So you don't have to get too wild, is what, right?
correct.
Is what I'm
Right.
hearing you
Yeah.
say. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think that the production value for Expanse is actually pretty good. But I would say that Wheel of Time is probably even better than that.
Okay.
As far as which one I've enjoyed more, I've had a hard time getting. I said this, I think, in the Discord. I've had a hard time getting into The Expanse because I'll watch it and I'll be like, I should probably just read the books and not watch the TV series, which
Okay. Interesting.
is kind of a flaw of mine, I guess. I don't know. But I wanted, and part of it is that when it's been long enough since I've read something, I do start forgetting things about what I read. And so, I would watch it and be like, oh yeah, I kind of remember the broad strokes of what's happening in Wheel of Time, but I don't, but I do kind of want to keep watching to see what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I haven't even thought about this, but this will be like me. I will be watching a totally fresh property here, Jay. Let's be totally frank.
I think there will be times where you'll be watching it and be like, yes, as you're watching it happen, you're like, oh yeah, I remember this happening in the book or et cetera, right? But you likely won't be able to be like predicting what's going to happen next or being disappointed that they changed something.
Yeah. Okay.
Versus the book. So.
Well, honestly, I'm probably willing to make it what I start watching next because we just finished Hawkeye, and I haven't really been. I kind of fell away from watching Foundation. Like, I really should go back and finish it. Did you finish it?
I mean, I did finish it. And
okay.
I would say that it only gets worse as it goes on.
Oh, really?
And it's probably one of my biggest
disappointments
of recent history.
So are you advising me to do Wheel of Time?
I enjoyed Wheel of Time much more than Foundation.
Interesting. Okay. All right. You really do you get a prize? Is there a prize for who win this pitch? Because I feel like Jay's doing a better job with this pitch than me.
I mean,
He's not done. I'm ready to start my questions when you.
Yeah. Tear him up.
My last comment is that it did. One of the biggest side effects of watching Wheel of Time is that it has made me want to rewatch Game of Thrones, and part of that is just that Brian and I just rewatched The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings movies at the holiday season, and so I just rewatched those. And rewatching Wheel of Time, it is well done, but it made me appreciate, I guess, just how good of a job they did with Game of Thrones.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
Okay, Trevor, ask me your question.
So, unlike you guys, when the Wheel of Time books came out, I had a lot of friends who read them, but I am not a fantasy reader. Even back then, It really wasn't my cup of tea. I was reading sci-fi novels even back then, and so I've never really latched onto most fantasy series. I had very little interest in them, and seeing the previews for the show, there's even, maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought there was a scene where there was some like guys on horses that look like, they look like the Nazgul riding through the forest, and I'm just like, this looks like so much of a ripoff of just all the other fantasy tropes. I'm just like, I just didn't have any interest in it, and I had so many other things on my list that I was interested in, that I never even got onto the list. I just didn't have that much excitement for it. And part of the problem was I'd heard all of my friends, and I'm including you guys in that, as far as talk about all these problems that they experienced while reading these books. How they all just loved reading the first 1 or 2 books, and then they just started.
By the way, Trevor, I feel like real quickly, I want to just short circuit that conversation because I've been told on multiple occasions that when Brandon Sanderson picked the series up and finished it, he really finished it out strong. And so
Yes,
I
but that's
do.
also by people who like Sanders. So
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair. Anyway, so carry on. I can see why that would have had a chilling effect for you also, Trevor.
yes,
Yeah, and I just, to me, it almost felt like Amazon's like they were doing what Jay was talking about. They were grasping for the next Game of
Right.
Thrones. Let's just grab whatever we can. We'll grab this Wheel of Time series, which, admittedly, everyone loved the first few books. So I'm like, oh, well, that, maybe if it, gets canceled eventually, at least the first few seasons are great or whatever. But I'm just like, you know what? I've got other things to do. I don't have any desire to watch this. So
I mean,
why would someone like me want to watch it?
I mean, I don't think that. So
Because I don't think
I
I'm
don't-
the only one out there that
I don't
didn't
think I
read the
can.
books.
I don't think I can resolve your concerns, Trevor. I am failing at the commitment pattern, but
Well, what is there for someone who has not read the books?
I
You
guess I
feel
will
like,
say
you
that
feel like it delivers on a value that doesn't necessarily require you to have had any of the source material.
yes, I think that. And Brian hasn't read the books. He watched it. He did enjoy it. I guess some of the things I will say that are the strongest points for this series are that it does use a lot of fantasy tropes. I mean, it has the chosen one who is confronting the Dark Lord, et cetera, et cetera. But it feels like they're fairly well done, and part of the reason why tropes are tropes is because they're entertaining, and so I guess take for that what you will. Another thing I'll say is that there is interesting world building that goes on, and so there are things that kind of look like the Nazgul, but there are also things that are pretty unique to this world and that feel like it's not just I'm not just watching the Book of Boba Fett being a bad carbon copy of Dune.
Oh my gosh, I was just
Shots
waiting
across
for
the
the
bow.
dig to
Jeez.
come. Okay. Amazing.
I'm super excited for us to grade Book of Boba Fett, by the way. So I mean, I don't I don't know what else to say. If you're not if fantasy isn't your thing, then I don't know that this is going to overcome that. But
So
go ahead.
I mean, I'm probably different than the average person who hasn't read The Wheel of Time. But the funny thing is I do love fantasy. I've played D&D my whole life.
Right.
I love video games and fantasy. It's just for whatever reason books just don't. And maybe it is that they're all so tropey. And really fantasy, high fantasy especially, is such a small niche if you think about the range of what it is in comparison to what sci-fi is or what sci-fi could be, that it's hard to get outside those tropes in some situations.
Yeah.
But I clearly love fantasy. I've spent a lot of time in it. I just don't enjoy reading it for whatever reason.
I'm a little surprised that your wife has. I mean, has she read the books?
I don't think so.
Whoa,
Yeah.
that does blow my mind.
I was a little.
I haven't actually asked her, but it's not something that it's never come up. And she's read a lot of books, so
Yeah.
I could very well be wrong, but I just don't think that's a series that she read.
I mean, I was going to say I'm a little surprised that she hasn't convinced you into watching the show with her. But one of the strong points as well with the books and the TV show is that it does have a pretty good. It has a lot of strong female characters that are interesting.
Yeah.
And it has in the society the magic users are female because they're the ones who don't go crazy. And so there's interesting things that come out of that.
Well, I think my wife and my daughter would both love it, and honestly, my biggest concern would be they would both come out of it wanting to read the books, and they would take off, and then they would probably feel these same highs and lows that you guys have already talked about. And I mean, truly, my daughter is reading stuff that I consider probably way better as far as a path that she should be
right. Yeah.
Right now. So
one of my this was a few years ago. At this point I only read digital books, and Wheel of Time was up for best series in the Hugo Awards. And it was like, so one of the things that the Hugo does is if you buy a membership to Worldcon, they have a membership where you can either travel to the convention and attend and hang out at this book convention, or you have one where it's just a voting membership and then you vote on the books. And in most cases, you get copies, digital copies of all the books that are available to be voted on. So it's a really good value, but that's dependent on the publisher on if they're willing to give that to them, right? And so Wheel of Time was up for best series, and I could have gotten a Worldcon membership, which would have been like $30, and gotten the entire series for $30. And I was like, at the time, I was like, you know what? No, I don't want to do this because I just don't want to, read through those middle books. And I watched the show, and I was like, man, it would be kind of fun to read the books. And then I went and looked at Amazon, and to buy like the entire series is like $160.
and so now you have that old price kind of like weighing you down.
Yes, I
basically.
have the anchor price.
That is amazing.
We read every book, it would 1,000% be worth the $160 of entertainment.
Yeah,
with
right.
all the hours I would spend on it. But
that's funny.
It's just kind of a funny story related to that. So yeah. Anyways, any other questions, Trevor, on Wheel of Time?
No, I don't think so. I think that like I said, my wife and daughter will love it. We'll watch it eventually. I just don't know that it's going to happen soon. My guess is that it'll probably get saved until season 2 is close, and then we'll probably do kind of both at the same time.
I guess one other thing I will say is that a lot of the book nerds are book fanatics with it. There is something that happens at the end of season 1 that doesn't happen in the books, and there's a lot of the book nerds who are kind of up arms over it.
They're angsty about it.
Yeah, and like it's fine. They just ignore them. Go watch the show. It's fine. Just ignore the book nerds.
Yeah. Again, my double-edged sword curse of a memory will make that not even an issue.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, I actually did. So I read an article that was like, here are all the things that changed between the book and the series. And because when I got to the end, I was like, I think some of these things are different, but I wanted to see like the actual list.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of the things I did remember correctly that it was different, the thing that everyone's upset over, but like, it's just not.
It's not worth being upset over?
Yeah, it's not as big a deal as everyone is making it, in my opinion. So.
All right. Fair enough.
All right, Trevor.
Good half pitch. That was a half win, Trevor. Or Jay, yeah, close us out, Trevor.
All right, so I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm not sure that this game is something that Jay will enjoy at all, but this pitch is being more directed towards Josh. Jay would probably enjoy it, but the pitch is not going to be strong enough for him, I don't think.
Okay.
Okay.
So excited.
So the game that I'm going to pitch is called Dice Legacy. It is a video game, but really it's a board game. Okay, but the mechanics of this board game are too complex to play it on a board. It really wouldn't be fun. It would be way too much micromanagement. So Dice Legacy is a somewhat roguelite dice rolling game.
Cue up the "you son of a bitch, I'm in" meme.
Where you roll these dice, they work as your workers. So the dice have a color and specific sides that are based on the type of worker they are. So the first ones you get are kind of a yellowish orange, and they're peasants. You can upgrade those into these green dice called citizens. Then there are blue ones, which are the soldier dice, the red ones, which are the merchant dice, and the last kind is the purple ones, which are the monk dice. And you roll the dice, and then you put them on various parts of the map where they do something. So depending on what symbol they roll depends on where you can put them on the map. Gathering food, gathering wood, gathering stone, gathering iron, gathering things like that. Working in the fields, or gathering herbs, etc. There's a bunch of different resources, just like any other city building sort of real-time strategies type of game. This game isn't turn-based because when you place a die, it has a timer until you get it back, till the task is complete. However, you can pause the game. So you can pause the game, roll all your dice, decide where everything is going, unpause the game, let the timer runs out until dice come back to you, and then you rinse repeat. So this here sounds just like any board game. You would think, okay, this could all be done at a board. How is it different? Well, each die has a durability that counts down. Every time it's rolled, its durability goes down by 1. So that is one of the things that would be difficult to track at a table.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get the durability to go back up, you have to feed them. So that's the purpose of the food in the game, is you feed the die, it gains durability back. If the die ever gets to 0, the worker dies. You have a pool of 12 dice, you can never get past that in your hand, although you can have more than that out, but if they come back to your hand all at the same time and you get more than 12, they get basically removed. But your goal is to gather resources, gain technology, knowledge, which you use to open different tech tree. There's a
tech tree. There's so dirty.
Pretty massive tech tree that has 4 stages and has various different branches that include like improvements to gathering or improvements to production, as far as like producing ale or producing wheat. There's a civic one that improves your ability to regain durability on dice and keep buildings better off. There's a manipulation tree, which allows you manipulate the dice. There's a military tree, which improves your ability to attack your opponent. You have an economy tree that helps you turn things into other things, like gold. Gold is one of the most difficult resources to gain, etc. And then there's a religion tree that helps you with the monk dice. But anyway, you go through seasons, and each season during the summer, you have an increased chance of fire and other problems. And during the winter, you have a chance that your workers, your dice, will become frozen. And when they're frozen, they can't be re-rolled until they thaw in the spring.
Okay,
and there's ways around that. You can build it's like a steam geyser, I think is what it's called, or something that sits in the middle of a section, and it covers any dice that are placed within it while it's burning wood, will keep them from being frozen. And the one major use for ale is you can send a frozen worker to the basically the inn and give them an ale, and it will thaw them. So you have to spend quite a bit of time preparing for winter. You have to have enough ale and other things to survive through the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And your wheat fields don't work during the winter, so you have to have wheat saved up, and you can use mills to turn them into food, etc. That's the basic pitch of the game. I don't need to go into too much more detail. I'm going to complain about a couple of things. The first
Before you complain, real quickly, did I misunderstand? Like, is part of the legacy element that the dice, through in different games, like they change also, or does that happen? Okay, permanently.
What is the name of this again?
Dice Legacy. I'm looking at the deluxe edition, Jay. It's already in my cart.
You don't need the deluxe edition. The deluxe edition just adds the soundtrack.
Never mind, I don't need the deluxe edition.
So the manipulation tree opens up a couple of buildings. One of them improves the die face. And the way it improves the die face is by adding like a subscript number. And that number is basically how many dice you need in a location to be able to complete the task, the number of symbols. So eventually you'll get to the point where a single die can complete it rather than having to put multiple dice in there. So that's how those faces get improved. Additionally, there's another, it's called a forge, where you can take 2 dice and put them together. So let's say, you don't need a full-time military die, but you still want some of those in play. You can forge it with another one. And when they go into the forge, they get usually a special characteristic, which can be negative or positive, which improves or causes them some issues, because the forged dice are fairly strong. They also gain, more numbers on each of their faces. I mean, again, more things that would be very difficult to do on a tabletop game, but which work in perfectly in the digital world. So yes, the dice get better. To get the dice into a quote unquote legacy format where you can bring the dice into later games, you have to do what's called ascend the die. So there's a religious statue that you build, And
Mhm.
basically, you remove the die from your game, and it gets put into your ascended die pool, which you can then use in future games.
That is funny.
So there is a cap on the die faces. What I don't know what it is. I think it might be 10. I never got close to it in my first game. And there's one other thing I forgot to mention. At the end of each season, each year, the city council meets and they propose some things. And these proposals, you basically pick one. You're proposed with 3 different things. This is sort of the roguelite element.
That's not how representative government works, Trevor.
You're proposed with these 3 things, and you pick one of them, and they're going to improve something. A good example is one of the ones that's quite powerful. Is called greenhouses, and it's usually proposed by the peasants. And greenhouses allows you to grow wheat in a peasant section of your map, even during the winter.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so they're upgrades, but you have to pick one, and whichever one you pick, there'll be different colors for the different dice you have available.
Uh-huh.
And whichever one you pick makes those group of people happier. So there is a happiness to manage with the different classes. And one of the things that can be very difficult to deal with is when, you don't choose a certain people's thing repeatedly, eventually they get pretty angry. You have to throw a party for them in the city square, etc., to make them happy again. So managing happiness is a little bit part of it too. So anyway, you can lock dice so they don't have to be re-rolled, etc. I mean, it does all the things you would kind of expect it to do.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a couple of nitpicks. So, and I'm going to give these up front because one of them I think is going to bother you, Josh, a little bit. Maybe not.
Okay, all right.
The first nitpick, and I'm just going to tell this to anybody who plays, it drove me nuts. You should probably go in and change this if it would drive you nuts too, is the default reroll of the dice was the space bar.
Oh, so did you accidentally hit it a couple times and stuff?
Oh yeah, because the space bar to me from Neverwinter Nights and a bunch of other games was pause.
Mm.
So I would hit it to try to pause, and it would roll all my dice. And I'd be like, son of a... So I immediately changed that key so that rerolls were my R key on my computer. And,
sure.
And my space bar was pause. I will say that this game is also available on Switch. I have not tried it on the Switch, but might be interesting on the Switch. But on the computer, spacebar, switch it, make it the pause if that would bother you. The other thing I'm going to mention, and this one's probably the bigger condemnation, is that in the first game I played, it felt like it overstayed its welcome.
Oh, really? So
yes.
how long of a play was it?
The 6 hours that I mentioned was my first play.
Oh, interesting. And that was one game, not
one game. Yes.
You didn't. Interesting.
So let me put a little bit of preface on that, or a little bit of not a preface, but a
caveat.
A caveat, yeah, that's the word I was looking for. A little bit of a caveat. I was learning the game mechanics, so I spent a lot of time going through just trying to survive before accomplishing my goals. So the game probably could have been ended much, much quicker had I understood what I was doing.
Okay.
So I was still learning a lot. But I do feel like you spend a lot of time just trying to get to where you can actually complete. So in the base game, the whole game is based on a little ring world. You're floating in space on a ring world. You land a ship onto a beach, and the ring world is maybe 400 yards across.
Okay.
And you work your way up the ring until you get to the other side of the ring where an opponent is, and you have to defeat that opponent, and that's the end of the game. Well, it just took me a long time to get the resources up enough to get across the map to be able to defeat them. And part of that was because I didn't necessarily understand the progression of all the different resources and how to get it to happen. I'm pretty sure if I went back and did the same scenario again, I could finish the game in probably half the time.
Okay.
But it did overstay its welcome for me in that first game. 6 hours felt like a really long time just to get across the map and kill people.
Yeah, that does feel like a long time. But let me follow up your caveat with a question, which is, how likely are you to play it again?
Pretty likely, I think. There's other scenarios. There's other situations you can run. And the tech tree was interesting. And I didn't really explore it. In fact, I will say this, and maybe this is part of my problem. Because your dice pool is limited to 12,
mm-hmm.
I I never got any monk dice. And one of the mechanics that I didn't understand was that your dice pool isn't limited to 12. It is your hand that's limited to 12. So if I have 35 dice out on the board and I have 7 dice in my hand, I'm not limited. Now, would that work? No, because a bunch of them would all end at the same time. They'd come back to my hand and I'd lose a bunch of dice. And losing dice is painful. You don't want to lose dice. Because it's hard to, it would take time to get them back. But could I have managed, say, 16 to 20 dice? Yes, I could have pretty easily. In fact, most of the time I only had, say, 4 or 5 dice in my hand at any given time, because most of them were out doing things. And some of the tasks take, a minute and a half. Like this.
And
the science.
Is there any way
task
to?
is really
I didn't even
long.
think of this, but is there a way to speed up the timers?
Yes, but I rarely did.
Okay.
There was almost always something going on.
Mm-hmm.
I was almost never waiting for a die. There were certainly dice that I was waiting for somewhere on the board, but that didn't mean I couldn't be doing something.
Okay. It just sort of makes you wonder how long the play would take, like if you never paused or something. You know what I mean? Which is probably straight up crazy talk.
I mean, I think it would be a little bit different game, and if you enjoy it, I think you should try it. I think it would be a little chaotic and probably fun. It wasn't necessarily what I wanted to play. I was looking more for a more strategic, thought-provoking, okay, I'm going to roll them, and then I'm going to put them here, and what should I do? I was thinking more limited actions, but the truth is your actions are, as long as you got enough food, and you can keep feeding the dice to get their durability back, there's no limit. You can go on for a really long time. So anyway, I think that the game the challenge would go up considerably if you never paused. And I think there is a game mode where you can switch it to where it won't let you, or you can pause. There's several steps. One of them is you can pause, but you can't re-roll the dice while it's paused. So you can pause and think for a second, but you can't manipulate the dice while the game is paused.
Okay.
So one of the things on the normal setting, the default setting, you can pause the game, re-roll dice until your heart's content, place all the dice, and then start the timer again. So certainly with the timer going all the time, you'd be eating up a lot of time doing that, and you wouldn't be able to maintain as large a pool of dice because they'd be coming back to your hands more frequently. And if you get over 12 in your hand, you're going to lose dice. Anyway, I did not ascend any dice in my first game because I was doing it more from a let's learn about the game sort of standpoint.
Yeah.
But I think you could build some pretty cool dice that you could send on to your next games, and you can the ascended dice. I believe you can pick up to 2 of them that you add to any one game that you start.
Mm-hmm.
And that would make it very. The legacy part is very thin.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean? It's just that's the only legacy part is the dice you're bringing in the next game. But I think that that's something that could potentially speed it up as well. I mean, if you're bringing in 2 fairly powerful dice that you've built up over a couple of games, that head start of just having those dice available is kind of a big deal.
Could be a big deal, sure.
Well, so one of the things that really gets you moving forward, obviously, is the techs. And the school where you earn the points that you use to buy the techs takes at the start of the game, a normal game would take 3 citizen dice. And in a normal game, you don't even start with citizen dice. So if you had a dice that you're bringing in that was a citizen die that had a 3 on that die face, so it took 1 die and all you had to do was roll that citizen die, hit the 3, put it on that location, and then you could use the rest of your dice to do other stuff. Your techs would start leveling up quicker as well. And that's a pretty big benefit. Whereas normally putting 3 dice in a place for 80, 90 seconds really slows you down. So anyway, I enjoyed it.
Solid pitch. Maybe I'll play it while watching Wheel of Time.
I'm going to play it some more. I don't know how much the time thing is going to bother me, but learning kind of the basics of the game helped me a lot.
Yeah. I'll be interested to hear how long your next play is.
Yeah, me too. If it's another 6 hours, I'll probably
be done at that point.
Yeah, that's too long for this game. Like I needed
what you're getting, right.
Yeah, I needed the game to be done in 2.5 hours, really. But the concept's really cool. I wish it weren't so fiddly because it's the type of game I would love to sit down with a bunch of other people and have a nice, beautiful board with, the mine over here and the trees over here where I can gather wood and just.
Oh, so I didn't even understand that. You could like multiplayer this.
I don't think you can.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying it would be cool to have a tabletop multiplayer version of this game.
That was that.
Yeah, but the truth is this game is if you trying to manage all of the little things going on with the dice at an actual table, especially like the timers and stuff, it would be way, way too fiddly. It would never work.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, I guess let us know what you think of the pitches and what you think of the stuff you've watched, or
let us know if the pitch episode ruined your wallet the way it ruined mine.